introduce yourself when you, oh, we're at 11 a.m.?
Hey, Deb, the
Yeah.
YouTube is looking weird. It says waiting for national. Oh, there it goes. Never mind, never mind.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking for it now. Okay, got it. Yep, we're live. All right, I'm going to turn my mic off and my video off. And Dr. Ritchie, you're live.
Okay, great.
And we are so pleased to learn from you today. Thank you so much for your partnership. I want to congratulate you on an amazing Earth Day 50th year anniversary. I can't imagine how tremendously difficult that was with COVID, but I know you had a lot of success. So we're so excited to learn from you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deb. This is such an honor and a privilege to be joining you today again for our second teach-in with you. I'm going to talk a little bit later of just how important the environmental teach-in is for Earth Day and Earth Day Network, but we're just thrilled to join you and your audience today to talk more about that. First, I want to introduce myself, give you a little bit of background because as this is the National Biodiversity Teach-in, we're going to be talking a lot about people today. So less about wildlife biodiversity, but more about the biodiversity we have within humans and our power to help biodiversity around the world. So again, my name is Tracie Ritchie. I'm Director of Education for Earth Day Network. And I have a bit of a circuitous background that got me here today. I've worked a lot with biodiversity and wildlife, but now consider myself a social scientist and work with people mostly. So I started off my undergraduate degree at the University of Florida, and I have a bachelor's degree in wildlife ecology and conservation. From there, I had an internship towards the end of my undergraduate degree with sea turtles in South Carolina. And that's where I really caught the education bug of working with sea turtles, teaching people on that island in South Carolina about sea turtles and how they can help protect them. Just got me so excited. And I saw the power of education and conservation. So I wanted to learn more about how to be a better educator. So I got my master's degree at Florida Atlantic University, where I studied environmental education and how we can use science, and knowledge and ecology to translate that to the general public, to get them excited about conservation and preservation and climate action. And so from there, I've had a variety of jobs across the country, mostly in Florida and North Carolina, working towards environmental education and helping people learn more about our planet and how they can take action. And that led me to a PhD program at the University of Florida. I went back to University of Florida, so go Gators. And that's where I started researching climate education and climate change and how we could embed that more frequently and more authentically into K-12 education. So looking at how we can use systems thinking as a way to really understand the entire environmental ecological system and how all these variables interact together and how us humans are a variable in that system as well, and how our actions have great impacts on those systems and what we could do to mitigate those impacts that we have. So yeah, I have a range of degrees. I was in school for a really long time, so happy to answer questions about that later today too. But wanted to tell you more about Earth Day 2020, Digital Earth Day, and what happened. So I was actually thinking back, we did a different teach-in, National Biodiversity teach-in back in February. It was February 14th actually, which was very different from today. I was in my office. It was very sunny that day. Today I'm in my apartment and it's very rainy here in Washington, DC. And we are in a very, very different situation. So a lot of the information I presented to you in February about Earth Day didn't happen. It was a very different world at that point. So I wanted to do a little bit of a recap of what we did for Earth Day 2020 this past Wednesday and how that continues every day and what you can do safely from home during this pandemic to still be an environmental steward, to take action for the environment and see what we can all do to make sure that we're not forgetting the climate crisis as we deal with this pandemic today. So I did a lot of this history in the last teach-in, but I wanted to do just a brief overview for anyone who missed it. But the first Earth Day happened in 1970, and it was in response to a lot of environmental degradation we were seeing here in the United States. In the late 60s, we saw Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, where she was talking about the massive bird kills in this country, especially bald eagles, due to a chemical called DDT. We had The Cuyahoga River in Ohio was literally on fire. It was so contaminated. There's a Santa Barbara oil spill, just was one of the first massive oil spills we saw on television, and how that impacted wildlife. Smog in urban areas was so toxic and so thick, you couldn't see a few feet in front of you in places like LA and Pittsburgh and other major cities across the United States. So at that point in the late 60s, the environmental issues were in your face. You couldn't avoid them. They were very visible and happening everywhere around the country. We also had this electricity of the anti-war and civil rights movements in the late 60s of people coming together and demanding change, demanding a better planet, demanding a better country for ourselves. And so Senator Nelson from Wisconsin wanted to take that electricity around the civil rights and anti-war movement and direct some of that energy about the environment too. We need to be stepping up for our environment due to all these visible pieces we were seeing. And so he hired several college students, one being Dennis Hayes, who was at Harvard at the time. And he wanted to organize college campuses and students to step up for the environment, protect our environment. And he did just that. So the first Earth Day was called an environmental teach-in, which is why I love connecting with the National Biodiversity Teach-in, because that's where our roots, our teach-in is the first Earth Day, and gathering people from around the country. And Dennis Hayes and his other organizers from college campuses managed to get 20 million people out onto the streets in the first Earth Day. 20 million people. That's no social media, no internet. He literally called, put ads in newspapers, and sent letters to people to get them excited for the first Earth Day. So as we had this 50th anniversary, we really wanted to acknowledge our roots through grassroots mobilization, and the power of the people and the power of their voices. So obviously we had a lot of different plans for Earth Day 2020. We wanted to see that same kind of mobilization in the streets, marches, rallies, concerts, festivals, strikes. But with everyone's safety on our mind, we just couldn't do that. And so we went for a digital Earth Day. And so, sorry, here's more great pictures of the first Earth Day. And this is Dennis here in the bottom corner on his landline phone that actually has a cord attached to it, if you all remember those. So this was the first Earth Day, and we had huge presence in the streets. But like I was saying, we couldn't do that this year, so we went digital. And in the past couple of weeks, we managed to completely pivot Earth Day to be online. So for the first couple days in April, you can see here on the right, we had our daily challenges. So April 1st to April 21st, we had a daily challenge for you of what could you do safely from your home to take action for the environment. And then on April 22nd itself, we had Ed Begley Jr. and his daughter Hayden lead a live broadcast from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. They were fantastic, incredible hosts that were on camera live all day long, introducing different speakers, different performances, different resources that we have, the campaigns through Earth Day Network, and all the different ways that you could take action for the environment. In addition to the live broadcast, we also had 24 hours of action. So our main website, earthday.org, changed every single hour to give you different calls to action of how you could be a better steward for our planet and what you could do to speak up and act up for the environment. So as you can see here, at one point on Twitter, we had 8.2 million viewers. So we were really excited about everyone tuning in. And if you go to Facebook or Twitter for Earth Day Network, which you can see here at Earth Day Network, you can still find this recording. So if you missed it, you're more than welcome to go back and see different pieces. We had lots of great performers and speakers and different performances from around the world, one including Bono at the end from live from the Coliseum. There was a piano player and Bono singing in the background, which was really special for me. But
Tracie, you have a question from YouTube.
Oh, sure.
It says, I was not aware of what happened on the Cuyahoga River. Can you briefly summarize what happened?
Sure. And so in the late 1960s, I believe the latest fire was in 1969. There were chemicals being dumped into the Cuyahoga River in Ohio. So I believe it was mostly from textile industries, but I'm not entirely sure what types of chemicals. And so there was so many different kinds of chemicals in the river that was outweighing how much water was in the river, that caught fire somehow. And so there was more chemicals than water, which facilitated that fire. And so one thing, and thank you for that question, because it made me realize I missed an important point. Before the first Earth Day in April 1970, we did not have the EPA. The EPA Foundation, the existence of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, was a result of the first Earth Day. We needed more regulation. We needed more laws and policy and legislation that protected our environment. So when the Earth Day happened in April of 1970, by December, the EPA was formed. And then from there, within the next 2 years, we had the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, all different kinds of legislation around brownfield sites in the United States, and how we could clean up our planet. So before having really strict legislation and an enforcement agency to protect the water, that water in that river was so contaminated, it caught on fire. So that was a really significant piece. And again, another visual piece that made the environmental movement so possible. Great question, thank you. Are we good to move on, Brittany? I think so. Okay. So please feel free, jump in with any questions. I would rather this be more of a discussion than just me talking at you, because that's what makes a teach-in better. So from here, you see some of our digital pieces. All of our challenges are still on our website. So if you're looking to understand plastic pollution, biodiversity, climate change, we're going to talk about a few of those today. But we have tons of challenges on our website that you can engage in still and move forward, because it's kind of weird that I'm doing a Earth Day presentation on Friday when Earth Day was Wednesday, but of course, as the saying goes, Earth Day is every day. So it wasn't just Wednesday that we talk about the Earth and the planet and the environment and all we can do for it, and then we just stop talking about it. We wouldn't get very far if that was the true. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not off now that Earth Day is over. I wish I had a year-long vacation until the next Earth Day, but it's just not true. Earth Day is every day, and there's things that we can do every day, even from our homes, to help protect the planet. So we're going to go over a few of those today. And one way to see what other people are doing and contribute to this is our map, our Speak Up map on earthday.org. So if you go to earthday.org is our homepage, and there's a top menu up here, and you'll see Take Action. And there's tons of different actions you can take to tell us what happened from Earth Day? What was the result? Did you listen to something? Were you inspired by something? Did you try something? Did you learn something? Put that on our map. We want to know what happened. What's the result? So we're, again, really more concerned about April 23rd, April 24th, April 25th. What happens from Earth Day? What inspiration brews? And what creative ideas can you come up with to work towards the environment, especially in the situation that we're in today? So our Speak Up map has all these different icons. This isn't live right now, but if you'll see at the bottom, there's a map legend that tells all the different calls to action you're engaging in, from doing something at your home, like a plastic audit or a food audit of your kitchen while we're making meals at home, or thinking about your school, your campus, and how they're addressing climate change, or thinking about your faith institution, your house of worship, and what they're doing to talk about the climate and the environment, to thinking about in our communities how we can have more green spaces. There's tons of opportunities for actions, and we really would love to know what you're doing and capture that on this map. So again, earthday.org, take action and let us know what you're doing. And to help with some of those ideas, we want to make sure that we give you some food for thought, but then also I'd like to open it up during this discussion and at the end to hear what you are doing, what you did do for Earth Day this year, and what you continue to pledge to do moving forward. So wanted to go through a couple of our main campaigns that we have at Earth Day Network and give you some ideas, but hopefully these are just sparks to get your creative juices flowing to tell us what you're going to do. So climate change is obviously our theme for 2020. Climate action is something we wanted to address. We want to use that energy of Earth Day 1970 and all the environmental protection that came out of that in the United States to think about this more on a global level now, because Earth Day, while it started in the United States, is a global initiative now. We have over 190 countries around the world participating in Earth Day every year. So as we think about climate change as a global issue, you know, carbon in the atmosphere does not understand political boundaries. Carbon floats in the atmosphere at will. And so we really need to be thinking about our actions as having global impact. So the biggest thing we can do about climate change is talk about it. Sometimes it's an uncomfortable issue with friends or family if we have different opinions, but that's the most important thing we can do is talk about it, share our opinions, share our concerns, share our hope, most importantly, and have these conversations to better understand why we disagree about some of these issues. Have conversations at the dinner table once you learn something that day. If you're doing online school or working remotely, bring it up at dinner with your family or your friends or on your next Zoom call for happy hour. Talk about these issues and how you feel about them and try to understand differing opinions and how we can work together to ultimately come to a common conclusion and a common consensus of we need a better planet, and we all have a role to play in that. So have these conversations and talk about it. Another huge campaign for us is our food prints campaign. And so the second bullet here is about adopting a more plant-based diet to better understand how our food choices have impacts on the climate system, and how industrial agriculture does release a lot of carbon emissions, but we call it the food prints campaign because you really need to understand it's not just about carbon with your food choices, it's your land footprint, your water footprint, transportation, food waste. So really understanding the entire food system and how that impacts the climate system, and how something as simple as one meatless meal a day or one meatless meal a week could have a huge impact on your food print on this planet. And talking to other people. So not just your family members, but your local elected officials, your school administrators, your district representatives. Climate action can happen at many scales, and it's not just at the national levels through national elections. Talking to your mayor, your school district, your sheriff, everyone should be talking about this issue. So having that conversation all the time. Another big topic for us is biodiversity, so very fitting for this teach-in. We work a lot. 2019 actually was our whole theme was biodiversity and protecting our species and what we can do both locally and understanding our local ecology and what makes our ecosystems unique and special, but also understanding global biodiversity as well and how we play a role in that. So one thing that we created for this digital Earth Day is a pollinator toolkit and a pollinator garden planning toolkit. So a lot of us can't get to the store right now to get supplies, or we can't go outside to plant these pollinator gardens, but we can plan it. So you can't plant it, but you can plan it right now. So where would you plant it? What are your native species? What are your native pollinators? What is the growing season for those? When does pollination occur in your area? There's no one right answer to this. Pollination and native species and butterflies and bats and bees, they happen at all different times of the year. So we are in springtime right now, but that lasts for a good bit in a lot of parts of the world as we are warming. So it's never going to be too late to plant your pollinator garden, but you can plan now to know exactly what you can do when we're back up and running. And talking about your parents and your school districts and your communities, your local parks, how do they manage for pollinators? What native species do they have? How can we reduce pesticides and herbicides and other chemicals that we typically put on green spaces to keep them more native and toxic free? And again, always contacting your representatives. And one piece that I learned about this that I think a lot of us get a little nervous with talking to local elected officials. They're community members just like us, so they want to hear from you. But I think it's also really important to talk to your elected officials, not just when you have something of concern and something that you're displeased with, but also when they do something that really makes you happy, or if they step up for something that you also believe in, give them a call and say, thanks, that was a great job. I really believe in that. I support that. So I think a lot of our elected officials only hear from us when we're upset. And so it's really great to promote that relationship year round, especially when they do something that you're supportive of. So let them know that you're paying attention and that you're supportive when they do things that you like as well.
You have a couple of questions if you're ready, Tracie.
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Okay. First one is, does breakfast count for the meatless meal?
Absolutely, yes. So if you can eliminate meat and dairy and any animal product in any meal of the day, including breakfast, that would be a great one to do.
And then second question says, a common argument is regulation. I frequently meet people who say that people in industries will do the right thing, and this is why we don't need regulation. Why is regulation important?
That's a great question. And I think there are plenty of companies and corporations that do the right thing and are environmentally responsible, but some that don't. And so regulation just kind of helps us keep an even playing field. So companies that are tempted to cut corners and do something that's cheaper instead of better for the environment, or something that is ultimately better for their production for efficiency, but is less good for the environment. There's some companies that don't always do the right thing. So the regulation helps us with enforcement and policy to keep everyone doing good. And then we're thrilled and should support companies that go above and beyond to do better. Great. Any other questions?
That's it for right now.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brittany. And that kind of leads us into our next topic of plastic pollution, which was our Earth Day theme in 2018 and something we talk a lot about still to this day because it's still a big issue. So it's so important. I think we all know the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. But I think we need to be better at understanding that recycle is that last step, is the last option we have. First, we need to really think about how we can reduce. And we've been talking a lot about plastic audits while we're home and thinking about our purchasing decisions while everybody's home and getting things delivered and eating from trying to support local restaurants and getting takeout. What are the things that we can do without? So for here in DC where I live, we actually have a plastic ban. So we're not allowed to have any single-use plastics. But for some areas, if I'm in Maryland or Virginia, I always want to make sure to ask that if I'm getting takeout, I say no utensils, please, because I'm taking it home anyway. So I'm going to use my own knives and forks. So making sure that we don't get unnecessary plastic if we don't need it. If you don't need a straw, then ask politely, say, no, thank you, I do not need a straw. And think about all the other ways that we're consuming plastic right now, and any ways to eliminate single-use plastics is a great thing to do. But we can also support companies and industries that are working really hard to reduce single-use plastics. So places where we can buy items in bulk or put them in glass jars, or thinking about when you go to the grocery store and we have our snacks for lunch, having those individually wrapped cookies and crackers and things like that. Plastic bags at the store, making sure we use our own reusable bags at the store. There's so many easy ways that every day we can use less and less plastic. And now's a good time while we're home to kind of reflect on everything around us, what's in our kitchen, what's in our homes. How do we just slowly and surely eliminate that single-use plastics and even other plastics as well. So how can we have glass or stainless steel or other products that are not going to be useless as quickly. And so one of the big initiatives that we were really disappointed for Earth Day 2020 was the Great Global Cleanup. So we were working with entities all around the world to organize the world's largest cleanup this April. Again, it just wasn't safe to do so in large groups and to be touching materials outside, but we have postponed that to the fall. So we hope that you'll be joining us in the fall for the Great Global Cleanup in September, which is actually also International Cleanup Day. We'll have the Great Global Cleanup. Some people are still doing cleanups around their communities right now. I think one of the unfortunate consequences we've seen of all of the protective devices we've been using to stay healthy and safe during this pandemic, such as gloves or masks or wipes or different things. We're seeing that on the ground now, and that's really unfortunate. So making sure that if there are any of that protective equipment that we're using to stay safe, make sure it does get either recycled or in the trash can properly. And if you do see plastic waste or any kind of litter while you're out, only pick it up if you are in a really safe situation where you either have grabbers or gloves or something where you can get it into a receptacle immediately and you're not carrying it around. We don't really want to encourage people right now to go out and touch things that we don't know if they're clean or contaminated right now. But if you can do it safely, that's great. But if not, we're going to be having a huge global cleanup in the fall. So we hope you join us for that. And once again, the biggest thing we can always do is participate in civic action, talk to our representatives, look to cities like DC and other cities around the world that have bans for single-use plastics or taxes on that plastic, so we can try to reduce it as much as we can. And another way, which leads me into our next piece, and then I'll take some more questions, is Earth Challenge 2020. So Earth Day Network launched a brand new citizen science app where you can participate in that. We have 2 widgets within that app right now. One is for air quality and one is for plastic pollution. Again, if you cannot be picking up the plastic pollution, that's okay if you can't do it safely, but you can still take photos of it. If you're out for a walk or going to the store and you see it, you can take photos of that plastic pollution to help us identify just how widespread plastic pollution is. The other widget is the air quality app, which you can do from inside. So if you're not able to get outside safely right now, the air quality app can still take data from inside. You just need a picture of the sky. And you can also do this at multiple points in the day because air quality actually changes throughout the day. So download Earth Challenge 2020. You'll see the image here of what it looks like in the App Store, this little data point right here. It's a really great way to participate in science and citizen science and civic action while we're contained to our houses and our homes. So you can participate in citizen science, let us know what you're finding, help us collect data from around the world to help scientists better understand what is the status of our environment right now. And air quality has been a topic much more prevalent right now in the news, as we've seen some different and better air quality in certain urban areas that are just way down on emissions right now, where people aren't commuting to work every day. Air travel has cut down significantly. Some major industries have closed down because it wasn't safe to be in there. So our air quality in some places is dramatically different than when it was before the pandemic. And so collecting data now about that air quality is really great to understand how it changes and maybe how we can translate some of these actions that we're doing to stay safe from COVID-19. How does that translate to be better environmental stewards moving forward after the pandemic has passed? So what can we learn from this time and all this decrease in emissions to keep some of those behaviors going in the future? The last thing we want to see is this downturn of emissions just spike even more so when we go back to business as usual. So kind of taking note of these lessons that we're learning right now and seeing how we can keep up those behaviors. Are there any questions about Earth Challenge or citizen science?
Yeah, absolutely. First one is, are you reassured by how quickly it seems parts of the world seem to be recovering without human intervention? Things like skylines being visible, endangered sea turtles hatching on popular beaches.
Yes, that does give me hope. And just the dramatic behavior change in humans that happened almost overnight. I have to say, I was probably, in all honesty, a little frustrated at first, though. I will admit that the global climate crisis has not been perceived as a crisis as this was right now, because it was so immediate to address our behavior change for the pandemic to keep people safe. But the climate crisis is real. It's now. It's happening all over the world. So I'm hoping that people will translate this behavior change to address the climate crisis as well. And that some of this behavior change is lasting. But yes, it does give me great reassurance that our natural systems are incredibly resilient and that they are, we're seeing this positive change. And so I think it gives people hope and motivation that it's not too late. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom around the climate crisis and our carbon emissions and just, yes, we've altered natural systems and some will take generations to recover from. But there's some natural systems that are just, the turnover rate is much faster, and our behavior change, if we do something now, it's not too late. There's so much we can do. And so seeing the jellyfish in the Venice rivers and the sea turtles hatching, I think it was Thailand maybe, but even in Florida, we're seeing a lot of sea turtles hatching already, because they're not running into people's umbrellas, they're not running into holes that we dug on the beach, or they're not running into people. So instead of having all those false crawls that we used to have, the beaches are empty and clean and safe. And so I'm hoping that leads to a lot of sea turtle success this year. And in other places with the air quality again. And so I'm hoping we can keep up that. And yes, that does give me a lot of hope. So let's keep up the great work, everyone.
Awesome. Next question is, what steps do you think are necessary to continue that after COVID-19?
That's a great question. I think it's both. I think it's two phases of this grassroots support of individuals committing to this, committing to these behavior changes, seeing how easy they were ultimately for us to do, but then also top-down support in making some of these more common, more regular, giving incentives and support and resources to make some of these changes more feasible, more cost effective, and more prevalent too. So things that we can do for our energy use, for our transportation, for our daily habits, getting more local nutritious food to places. We're seeing that communities mostly impacted by COVID-19 are also communities that are most disproportionately impacted by climate change. And so how has this also given a spotlight to the inequalities that exist and access to safe food, healthcare, and resources that people need? How do we translate that? I think that's going to come from a top-down policy approach and legislation that protects our communities that are most disproportionately impacted and need the most support during these times. Great. Any other questions so far?
Yeah, one more.
Okay.
Are there resources for communities who want to create a ban on plastics? Is there a network of communities who have done that to help the communities working on it?
Absolutely, yes. There's tons of great models and best practices for communities that have done that. I've mentioned Washington, D.C. a few times because that's where I live and that's what I'm most familiar with. But there are several country or cities around the country and even around the world that are doing more significant things for plastic. And so if you go to our website, we have tons of information of all the cities and even countries that have plastic bans, what have been the positive impacts of that. So it's not just a environmental impact, but there's an economic impact there as well. We save communities a lot of money that they had to use for cleanups and the purchase of those plastic items. So we've seen a great response from restaurants that have reduced their plastics that they just offer to people, like straws and utensils, that they only offer them for people who need them. And so if you're not putting that many straws on the table all the time that don't even get used, you're saving yourself a lot of money. So we have a ton of information on our website. And we have David Ayer is our plastic pollution campaign manager. And so I can get you in touch with him if you have more questions about some best practices for municipalities that have put different bans in.
Great, you just got a couple more questions on YouTube. Andrew asked, I've read a lot about microplastics in the ocean. Can you explain how that affects the biodiversity of ecosystems and how it can change food webs?
Sure, great question. So microplastics are when plastics, they decompose over time and they take much longer than a natural product. So anything that is fossil fuel based will take a lot longer time to decompose. And so it never completely goes away, a piece of plastic, it just gets into smaller and smaller bits. And that's what microplastics are. And we do see a lot of those in our oceans because the salt water does break it down some, just not completely. And so we've seen a lot of marine wildlife that are ingesting that plastics while they're in or near the water. And so that can have a great system of bioaccumulation. So the fact that something small eats it, something bigger than that eats that, and something bigger than that eats that, it accumulates, it grows as the food chain happens. And so if there's a really tiny fish that consumes some microplastics, and then a bigger fish consumes that, and then a bigger fish consumes that, and then say a marine mammal comes in and eats that, there's more and more plastic in each bite and each level of that food chain that exists. And we've seen some animals that have had numerous complications from ingesting plastic. Either it gets caught or lodged in their throat or their digestive system, or because they can't digest it, it just stays in their system. So they think they're full when they're not, so they're not getting enough nutrition. It can strangle them. There's all kinds of really negative impacts of the plastics and microplastics. And so it can completely disrupt a food web by getting all through the system at the highest levels and with our lowest bottom feeders as well. So it's really important to do what we can to prevent. There's already so much plastic in the ocean, and there's many different projects that are working to eliminate the plastics and microplastics in the ocean. But the other biggest thing that we can do is prevent more from getting in there, so we can solve what's problem already is and not add to that problem.
Great. Next question from Bridget is, do you think that we will get a nasty re-entry into rebooting the economy for the environment, especially with less expensive oil prices?
It's possible, and this is not my area of expertise, so this is just my guess of what's going to happen. I know there's a great concern that once it is safe to start business up again, go back outside, resume school, resume transportation, there is going to be a spike of people have missed going shopping and they're going to go shopping a lot, or they're going to go travel a lot, and that it kind of will, the pendulum will swing a lot further the other way. So we have to be careful of that, and we have to be really mindful of our individual actions to make sure that we don't get too overly excited about, doing everything all at once that we've missed these past couple of weeks and months. So there will be a temptation to do that. And I hope that we can collectively decide not to do that and to think about what those consequences could be, what we've learned during this time. And I think, corporations and factories and companies will have the same temptation to overproduce and get back up and running and to make back the money that they lost during this time. But again, if we can slowly, gradually, kind of like we were slowly trying to gradually flatten the curve, we need to gradually and carefully and slowly return back to normal. And normal has a weighted connotation now. We're going to have a new normal. And so how do we have a better normal when we come out of this, and just be really careful, think twice about our decisions, and think what's best for the environment first.
That's it for now.
Great, thanks, Brittany. So great. But don't forget, everyone, download Earth Challenge 2020 before this teach-in is over and start using that app and collecting it. Another way to get involved with us, though I know many of you are not in school anymore, you're working remotely and learning remotely with your classmates and your teachers. But we do have a program called Earth Day Schools. And so if you'd like to participate, if you'd like to sign up, we are growing every day. We actually saw a 50% increase in the past couple of days of Earth Day Schools. So we'd love to include you on this map all over the world. We send out materials. We have tons of digital resources for teachers and students and parents who are doing a lot of the teaching now. So please come to our website. We've got lots of resources for you to help you while you're doing distance learning and online learning, and still feel connected in this community of Earth Day Schools. And again, Earth Day Schools are not just for April or for this week, they're year round. So please join us in becoming an Earth Day School, which you can find on our website. And something else that's going on today is a digital climate strike. So there was many students who were striking on Fridays from school for the climate crisis, to address the climate crisis and bring attention to the climate crisis. And again, that can't happen safely outside and gathering together. So digital climate strikes are happening all over the world, where you can take pictures of your signs that you would have outside, show your support. Many youth groups around the world are participating in this. Fridays for Future, Sunrise, Zero Hour, tons, Future Coalition. So find a community group near you, support that. If you want to participate in a digital strike, make your sign, show your support. Social media is a great way to do that, to again, still feel like we're in this together, still feel that collective impact and collective power, and bringing attention to the climate crisis in your community, with your friends, with your family, with your elected officials, with your school. Let people know that this is important to you, and a digital strike is a great way to do that. Another program I want to talk about is Artists for the Earth. And so we talk a lot about science through Earth Day Network, the citizen science program, collecting data, understanding the science and ecological systems. But the arts are just such a great, wonderful way to communicate about the environment, educate about the environment, and also avoid some of the doom and gloom that kind of brings us down. We want to talk about optimism. We want to talk about hope. We want to talk about all the good that we're seeing in each other and in the environment right now. So art is just one way to express that. And so it's a really, it can be a creative way, it could be a free-flowing way, just sharing with others your feelings about the environment, what we can do about it, your pledges, your commitment, and your hope for the environment. So use this time to get creative, whether that's painting or drawing, like some of the posters that we have here for Earth Day 2020, but photography, documentary films, sculpture, poetry, ballet. We have a whole program for Artists for the Earth, where we saw a lot of great performances on Wednesday from youth choirs from around the world to, again, music. We've seen all these great videos of balconies in Italy where they're performing, or videos of people doing mashups of songs together. There's just so many ways to communicate through the arts about the environment and our love for the environment. So I really encourage you to think of other ways outside the box, whether it's getting some chalk and drawing on your sidewalk for your neighbors about the environment and how much you love the environment, to making a song or a poem that you share on social media and letting people know that the environment is important to you. So stretch those creative juices right now.
You have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Somebody just asked about your posters on that slide and asked if they can purchase those because they're gorgeous.
Yes, they are gorgeous. I think some of them are available for purchase or will be soon. This middle one, the yellow, is our official Earth Day 2020 poster, which I believe is on our website. We do have a store on our website where you can get merchandise like shirts or banners, all different kinds of things with Earth Day logos on it. But also a lot of our pieces on here are free to download. We've got banners, we've got posters, we've got tons of stuff on our website. So back to the one of our original slides of the take action in the top menu of earthday.org. If you scroll down to materials, tons of posters and images there that you are free to download and use however you would like.
And then the other question is, can you remind us what your website is?
Yes, earthday.org, super, super easy. So earthday.org will take you to our main page. Take action will get you to all these materials that you need. And then our work and go to environmental education will get you to all the student resources. And perhaps after this, I can take you through our website too, if that'll help point people to different resources that we have, because we have a brand new website, which is really exciting, but there's a lot on it. So I'm happy to do a little website tour later if that helps.
Absolutely, that's it for right now.
Great, thanks everybody. One last thing I wanted to mention is today is National Arbor Day in the United States. So again, it's a little bit different. There's not many people out there planting trees today, but we have a campaign called the Canopy Project where you can donate money to our Canopy Project, where we help restore the canopy in developing nations all around the world or places that need help with canopy restoration, such as California after the wildfires or Puerto Rico after the hurricane. We work around the world to restore canopies in areas that need it. So happy National Arbor Day to everybody, and think about different ways and initiatives that you can research native trees in your area and plant one if it's safe to go outside and do so, or donate to organizations who are working on canopy restoration around the world. And then I think from there, we're going to wrap up the presentation, but now is the time to ask more questions and we can have a discussion or do that website overview. But just a reminder that Earth Day was not just Wednesday. It wasn't the only day to talk about the environment. So we have the very common phrase that Earth Day is every day. And at Earth Day Network, we like to say it's not just a day, it's a movement. So we're working on building the environmental movement, making sure that we're talking about the environment at all times of the year and at every level possible. One of our big campaigns for the fall will be Vote Earth. So thinking about how do we bring the environment into every election around the country and around the world. Again, not just presidential, national elections, but school district, sheriffs, mayors, local, so much happens on the local level. So how can we vote Earth in every election? And not just voting, but talking about our elected officials, talking to our elected officials, making sure that the environment is a priority for them if they want to earn our vote, and no matter what election that is. So just having these conversations at the community level to make sure that your community is doing the best that they can to protect your local environment. I have my contact information up here, so I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, if you have any ideas, especially if you're a teacher or a student and want to share what you did for Earth Day. I'd love to hear about it. We always work through our newsletter and our social media to highlight innovative projects and programs, just like the National Biodiversity Teach-In run by students. We want to know what you're doing and what you're up to, and especially now with so many different situations that we're in, online learning is not easy. And I give so much credit to all the teachers and parents that are working so hard on this. We have resources to make that easier for you. So please let me know how I can help you in that adventure. And just stay tuned to our social media on our website. We've got tons of content and resources for you year round. So please feel free to reach out with an email and happy to help you through that. And Brittany, are there any questions first, or should I dive into the website?
You just had somebody, James said, thank you for your time. And Joshua said, this is fantastic. And then you had one person request that you show the website.
Sure, great. Thank you, James and Joshua. I appreciate that. So I'll go to our screen. I have, Brittany, can you still see my screen now? Is that still sharing?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Great. So this is our homepage, earthday.org, and we've got tons of content on it. The other day, our live stream was happening here. This, I think, is one of our coolest new features. This is a heat map of Twitter and conversations using the hashtag Earth Day 2020 still going on.
Yeah, I actually just see your PowerPoint, but not the full screen of your PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. So I think, if I get rid of that. Okay. Oh, my screen sharing has stopped. Let me go back. I will screen share again with the website. Okay, did that work now?
Yes, now I see it.
Wonderful. Okay, so again, earthday.org is our homepage. This is this digital heat map right now of all the Twitter activity with hashtag 2020, which is so exciting to see just how much global action there was around Earth Day 2020 and how it's still going on. And if you keep scrolling, we've got tons of content on our website about all of our resources. And so I'll go back up to the top for our menu. So this top navigation menu is what I was talking about. And I'll move my screen. So our work is where you can find most of our campaigns. So our first one here is Earth Challenge 2020. So this is where you can learn more about the citizen science app that we have. And if you scroll down a little bit, science and education, and this middle one of environmental education takes you to all of our digital resources. So if you want to learn more about how we've pivoted for content for environmental education, you can explore more digital resources. And here we have ideas of what you can do at home for Earth Day. Something I absolutely should mention for this group is if you want to host your own virtual teach-in like we're doing today, we've got tons of resources to help you do so and different content of how you can talk about different climate topics for your teach-in. So whether you're most interested of coral bleaching or food waste or plastic pollution or biodiversity, we have tons of resources to help you host your own teach-in on our website. I hope you check that out. That pollinator garden I was telling you about, if you want to plan your pollinator garden now to get ready for when you can plant it, that's great resources for you. We've got tons of quizzes, so if you want to test your earth knowledge, we've got that for you. And we've had tons of partners that have made more digital resources available, from virtual field trips to museum tours to zoos, keeper talks, to activities and games and coloring sheets and everything you can need. That's all on our website. And then the last thing I'll show you is this Take Action tab at the very top, is where you can get a ton of our resources. You can register your map. That's the Voices map. I'll just keep scrolling here. So the map is where you register everything that has happened or is going to happen or what you plan to happen as a result of Earth Day this year, all the different categories we have. And sorry, it takes a little bit to load because there's just so much data on here. I'll scroll down, it'll let me a little bit more. Oh, and here's the legend. So there's all these different kinds of, if you have an idea, an action, a plan, a prayer, a story, anything you want to share with us. We also have the Campus Climate Project to tell us how your school is doing for climate action. Green Space, how's your community doing for preserving and conserving green space? And different opportunities for you to get involved. So you can tell us what you're doing, but you can also search for what other people are doing if you need some more ideas and inspiration. And then if we keep scrolling down, you can tell us if you're going to host a digital event, the Earth Challenge Citizen Science app again, for both Android and Apple. So if you need that, it should be available on all of your devices to download that Citizen Science app. More ideas of how you can take action. You can volunteer with Earth Day Network around the world. And here's some of the materials. Yes, here we go. Posters. We have them in different languages too, everything from English to Swahili, and some banners and logos and things like that. So if you need any of that content, you can have. And we do have the store up here. So if you wanted to look for some of those materials, posters, shirts, anything like that, we do have the store that you can donate to. And our Canopy project that you can donate to as well. So lots of opportunities to get involved with us, to take action with us, and stay engaged with the environmental movement during this pandemic. And I'll go back to the home page here.
You have one question from YouTube right now. It says, is there a topic or issue you are most passionate about?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have to say, probably my greatest joy in my career of environmental education is that I'm constantly learning about new topics. So as I've had different jobs throughout my career, sometimes I'm focusing more on water issues. I used to run a river basin campaign in North Carolina, where we talked a lot about surface water and how we used water and where water came from, which is really different from where I grew up in South Florida, where water was coming from underground, and how we could protect the aquifer and how we protected water. To when I worked on North and South Carolina beaches with sea turtles and helping to protect them, and got really excited about sea turtle conservation. I was an animal caretaker for a little while at different zoos. So learning about different species and their ecology and how we can protect certain species like koalas or Alaskan brown bears or cheetahs. So I kind of love that I know a little bit about a lot. So I don't have one major specialty where I know so much information about that. I think the most fun thing about environmental education is I'm always learning about something new. So it's kind of like picking a favorite child. I don't know that I could pick a favorite topic. It kind of seems to change day to day.
Awesome. Next question is, how can we prevent burnout?
Great question, especially in these times. I think we had some concern going into Earth Day 2020 that it just wasn't the time or appropriate for some of our audiences to be thinking about this when they had such bigger issues on their plate right now. But I think the way to prevent burnout and to keep this going is just, I think sometimes it's also a good distraction when thinking about other issues. You know, taking time to be quiet and connect to nature and meditate and appreciate the natural world. I know in the lead up to Earth Day, I was working very long hours. I was in my office for 12, 15 hours at a time, but I always made sure that once a day, at least once a day, I took a nice long walk outside with my dog. It is springtime in DC. The flowers are blooming everywhere. We have tulips and azaleas and daffodils everywhere. So I really just made sure at least once a day I took a nice long walk, connected to nature, had some quiet time outside, got some fresh air is really, really important still. So it's a lot. And I know when I did my PhD later in life, so I was an older student, and the more I learned, the more overwhelming it felt, especially around climate change. And so it's a real concern as you learn more, it's overwhelming. And so looking kind of the Mr. Rogers quote of looking for the helpers, know that people are doing something. There's so many people working on climate change. There's so many people working on conservation and biodiversity, not just professional scientists, but everyday people that can do so much. Just participating in a teach-in like this is a great thing to do to learn more and educate yourself. So don't feel, every action is meaningful, and every action makes a difference, and every action adds up to more action. So know that every little thing does help. I know sometimes it doesn't feel like that in the context of climate change, which is such a huge global issue, that your one straw that you refuse doesn't feel like much, but it's huge, and give yourself kudos for that. Everything that you do, that you make a conscious effort to be a better environmental steward, that's huge, and thank you for that. So acknowledge what you can do, what's within your control, and feel great about that. And the things that are beyond your control, they're beyond your control, and don't beat yourself up over that. And know that there's trade-offs, and nobody's perfect. There's been times where I've forgotten my bags and I have to get a plastic bag at the store, or I buy something, I'm out and I get a bottle of water at the gas station. It happens, it's okay. But knowing that you could do better next time, or try to remember your water bottle or your bag next time, as long as you learn from that experience, that's great. So don't beat yourself up for not being perfect, nobody is. And just do something every day that makes you feel good about it, and congratulate yourself and acknowledge that each time you do.
Okay, somebody on YouTube said, thank you so much for that advice and all you do. And then your last question is, what options are there for students with your organization? Do you have any internships or anything that they can apply for?
Yes, thank you so much. So both. We have internships, and I have to admit our internship is a little different right now. We typically do accept college undergraduate and graduate students to come to our office and be interns in office, but nobody's in our office right now. So we're going to explore some virtual internships for the summer. And possibly the fall as well. So we have information on our website about internships. And so these are unpaid internships, but you can get college credit for them. And then we also just have tons of volunteer options. So for any age, we'd love for you to volunteer with us. And there's 100 reasons or 100 ways that works. So you can volunteer with us by helping us on some of our projects, or you can volunteer with us by doing something in your community. So tons of options to get involved with us. So please check out our website for both internships and volunteer opportunities.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was a really, really great way to wrap up Earth Week on Friday. So I hope you check out our website, earthday.org. Get involved with us. Tell us what you're doing. We'd love to hear what you've been up to this week and what you commit to doing in the future. And thank you so much for your time and taking the time to watch this today and learn more about our environment. I hope you enjoy all the other National Biodiversity Teach-ins. There are so many great topics, from wolves to koalas to snakes to everything about our ecology. So thank you so much for Debbie, Brittany, and Tony for coordinating this today, despite all of our limitations with being online. And thank you for asking me to come back again, because I had a lot new information to share with you all this time. So thank you guys, everyone from National Biodiversity Teach-In and everyone who joined today.
Thank you for being here, Tracie. We appreciate your time so much.
Thank you. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day.